Welcome to The Talent Journey, a video podcast where a talent outsider like me asks dumb questions so you don't have to. Along the way, we'll hear the stories about how our talent leaders got to where they are today and pick up nuggets of wisdom from their experience that you can use in your own journey to become a better recruiter, employer brander, and talent leader. I'm your host, Justin Vaco, and today I'm talking with Mitch Gerson. For 30 years, Mitch has worked in the recruitment marketing space. His award-winning work has improved hiring efforts for some of the most well-known brands and companies in the world. He now leads the Gerson Agency, his own recruiting marketing agency based in New York. When Mitch isn't going on amusement park rides with his wife and kids, or cheering them on from the sidelines in theater, soccer, or tennis, he's likely working on his 80s video game and pinball arcade in his basement. Yep, the 80s are back, and they live in his basement. Mitch, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation with you.
So can you explain to me what you do like I'm a young child?
It's pretty simple. Back in the old days, there used to be something called classified help wanted ads. I essentially do a digital version of help wanted advertising.
Digital version of help wanted advertising. And in adult language, that would be?
Programmatic job board advertising, career sites, employer branding, social media reputation. It gets more complicated. That's why I still kind of fall back onto help wanted advertising. It's just simpler.
Yeah, very simple. People get that. And to be clear, Mitch and I do work together. We just started working together in the last year, kind of combining forces and providing some of those services you mentioned. Do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, no, I think that this is going to be the year in 23 that there's a bit of a vacuum on reputation management, employer branding in general. And I think this is a great opportunity to leverage your expertise in this area to really enhance what we're doing for our existing clients and hopefully some new ones this year.
So Mitch, how did you get into digital classified advertising, or how you put that?
It's just like every young child. They dream of getting into help wanted advertising as a young child. It's the craziest thing. I don't even want to say when I started, but long and short of it is, back when I graduated college, I applied to 100 ad agencies, and I'm not joking. It was 100. This is before the days of LinkedIn, and you really had to do the legwork. 3 or 4 actually responded, one of which was a company called Bernard Hodis Advertising, and they actually said thank you, but no thank you. And I interviewed with the usual suspects, Saatchi & Saatchi, DDB, the biggest ad agencies in the world. And a few months of looking, Bernard Hodis actually reached back out and said, we may have something for you. And in my opinion, Mr. Hodis created the business that we're in. And I was with Bernard Hodis for 20 years. They're now known as Symphony.
For our viewers should know, we've had plenty of conversations offline about Mitch's background and things like that. And I thought it was fascinating. So I want you to expand on that point. You believe that when you worked at Bernard Hodis, that agency, they were the creators of this entire industry that is recruitment marketing, employer branding. Can you tell me about that?
Well, first, actually, let me clarify, because you did ask me, how did I get into recruitment marketing? I didn't know this was something different. I just thought it was advertising because it was Bernard Hodis Advertising. That was literally the name of the ad agency on Madison Avenue. I'm like, okay, this is pretty straightforward. When I got interviewed, the first question I got asked was, why do you want to get into recruitment? And I gave an answer, and the person who interviewed me, who I still know today, smiled and he goes, you have no idea what this is. And I'm like, isn't it advertising? So I kind of fell into it. But Mr. Hodis, from the lore that we were told, and I knew Mr. Hodis back in the day when he was running the ad agency, he, in 1971, created the world's first 2-column wide display ad in the New York Times. Prior to that, nothing like that existed. There were no display help wanted ads, meaning logo, headline. He wanted himself to be in advertising, kind of fell into this, and he got permission to run the world's first 2-column wide help wanted ad in the New York Times, again, as it's been told to me. I believe it. I don't know. Mr. Hodis seemed pretty truthful to me. So
I think that's pretty cool that we could potentially trace back the origin story of recruitment advertising to Bernard Hodis and what he did. I thought that point was fascinating. So thanks for expanding on that. All right. What's your zone of genius, Mitch? Something that you're naturally good at that got you to where you are today?
The ability to manage multiple tasks almost simultaneously. So that is something that was honed by 20 years, probably 15 were still very print driven, and we were deadline oriented. Like if your ad physically didn't go out the door, and at the time Thursday night was our deadline night. Thursday night, when the FedEx or UPS guy came, your ad literally would not run on Sunday, which was the best day of the week to run a help wanted ad. So it was juggling copy, creative, clients, and we had, there were some digital assistants, computers and things. It was the early days of digital advertising. But at the end of the day, until that kind of wound down, I would say early 2000s, you needed to keep track of so many things simultaneously. And at one point, I had 4 people working for me because there were so many physical things you needed to do to get an ad out the door. So yeah, so I would say the ability to manage multiple priorities simultaneously is something that turned out to be very valuable. And there were definitely over the years, in my observation, those that struggled with that definitely had a hard time in recruitment. I can't speak to regular advertising. There's still deadlines, but it's not quite as stringent as recruitment was at the time.
Has there ever been a time you failed at something, and did that teach you anything?
Yes, one instance in particular was probably one of the most important learning exercises I had ever experienced. It was a big box retailer of electronics, and the HR director was very specific in telling me, I need your help. We're doing a half-page ad. She was running jobs in this ad that essentially she was replacing some of her team members. So it wasn't a blind ad, but the team members weren't yet informed that those changes were happening to the team. This was an unusual set of circumstances that the VP of HR reached out to me personally, and I never worked directly with the VP. Long story short, I wrote the ads, I prepared everything, and one of the HR directors called me and said, the person, I won't mention names, asked me to get a copy of the ad you're working on. Can you please send it over? I didn't think anything of it because it's somebody who I'd worked with week over week for years saying, can I just take a look at this ad? Little did I know they were one of the people that were no longer going to be with the organization. Here's where it got really ugly. The VP of HR called me. She was livid, as she ultimately had a right to be, because she repeatedly told me, do not discuss or share this with anyone. And it never occurred to me that somebody who I built up a level of trust and a working relationship with on the client side would kind of take advantage of my relationship with them and say, very casually, can I take a look? I just want to proof it. So the lesson there was do what you're told. And the importance of that confidentiality became very, very clear to me in that moment. Everybody that ever worked for me, I said, we are bartenders. We need to listen. We need to, commiserate when necessary. There were highs, there were lows, but don't share information that somebody is sharing with you with somebody else, AKA don't gossip. And that's something that was a hard lesson. I was mortified by that. And something that I carry with me through to today is to be very respectful of that relationship. Talent acquisition is something that needs to be respected, and that level of confidentiality is critical. And do your best to just not make those mistakes.
And on that note of talking about the world of talent acquisition, what you do, recruitment marketing and online advertising, programmatic advertising, what's something you wish more people knew about in your world?
As the world of recruitment marketing has changed, there's this combination of technology and I'm going to say art. The ability to get a high number of qualified clicks at a low cost, I say this all the time, it really is an art and a science, and it takes experience. So I've seen some companies kind of try to do this on their own, but unless you can understand the bigger picture and understand how geo impacts, how job titles impact, how your competitors in markets will impact you, even just understanding what is a fair value for a click to get an application, that's not easy. That's very hard to do. And I think that surprises folks when I start going over how complicated this really has become. And you really need somebody on your side with experience. These guys are pretty good with experience to kind of walk you through that transaction because it's hard.
What's one unshakable belief that you have that you'll never compromise on that informs the way you do business?
Be truthful. And when you screw up, admit it, because it's going to be really obvious when you're not being truthful.
Take ownership of your mistakes. Love that. So what's something you're learning about or curious about right now?
I am fascinated by Gen Z. So I just posted something on LinkedIn that the thumbs up emoji is now considered a slur amongst I can't say all, but apparently certain emoticons are now canceled. The thumbs up, the heart emoji, the grimace emoji, the shy monkey emoji. And it's interesting because I don't understand it. But according to the 18 to 29-year-olds, that is dismissive and disrespectful because you're not being thoughtful. I've already explained something to you of importance, and you're just dismissing me with a thumbs up. And if you're in an intergenerational working relationship, and most of us are on Slack and Zoom, and this matters, maybe skip the emoticons altogether. That's something I'm learning. But to your point, I still use them.
I like my emojis. They're all over my recruiting, my website. I got to go through, see if there's any thumbs ups on there. What's a process or strategy you found success with that you're able to share with our listeners and viewers?
Listen and ask a lot of questions. I always had my sales deck and I had my 20 slides or whatever, however many slides. And this was at the beginning and even across some other agencies. And sure as heck, if I've got 20 slides, you're going to see 20 slides. I worked hard on these slides. I did research. I looked you up. I try to prepare in advance. I don't like to jump onto a call cold. When I used to put all that effort in and I put it on a screen, I'm like, look how much work I did. Look how good I am. And it doesn't win business. It can be cumbersome. It can be a little tedious. So what I've learned is I will have that prepared. Sometimes I'll go back to it, but I'll present it. Sometimes I don't present anything. I think I'm at a point professionally where I start with questions like, why are we even having the conversation? What do you perceive that is wrong with your process? I have my own thoughts and observations based on experience. That doesn't mean that's what's important to that prospect or even client. I'd like to think I'm more on it than not, but I'm still surprised when it's not what I thought. Like we're jumping on a call and it's not quite what I thought we were going to talk about. But that's also something that experience thankfully has given me is the ability to adapt to those moments in a conversation.
And last question for you, Mitch. What bit of advice would you share with a younger version of you?
In my 20s, I assumed I knew more than everybody else. I assumed I knew how it all worked. Tell me once I figured it out. And that's simply not true. And I would say pay more attention to those that are again, I'll use my recruitment marketing experience, that are in recruitment marketing that have something to teach you and be more open to hearing it versus thinking, this is easy. I got it all figured out. I was very, very fortunate. I had some key mentors. I'll mention one in particular, Sherry Jacobson, who I worked with for almost 26 years, was pivotal in helping me. She helped me when things were going wrong. She helped celebrate when things were going well, and occasionally kicked me in my butt when I was getting lazy. And I was very fortunate. Not everybody has that in their career. And I didn't recognize that relationship until it was probably 10 years into it. But looking back, give them a little more room to share their wisdom and experience. And you don't have to absorb it all, but try to be open to hearing at least some of it, because they're not trying to hurt you. They're trying to help you. So that was, hopefully that makes sense.
Well, Mitch, we've gotten to know you a little bit today in the podcast. Where can somebody learn more about you?
Well, I appreciate that. Conveniently, you can go to thegersonagency.com and you could learn about the work that we do today for employer branding, career websites. I would argue we can compete with some of the biggest ad agencies, recruitment ad agencies in the world, and we can pretty much do anything from a recruitment marketing perspective that you might need.
Okay. All right. So we got your website. Thank you very much, Mitch, for being here today. And we'll catch up later, I'm sure, offline. And again, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Justin. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Talent Journey podcast with your host, Justin Vaco. To learn more about Dialogue, visit recruitwithdialogue.com.